Hello and welcome to another episode of Mr. Stitch Films podcast, Creepy Corner. Our corner of the internet for an hour or so to talk all things creepy, weird and wonderful. I'm your host, Anthony M. Winson, and give a big warm welcome to our returning co-host, Craig.
Hey y'all! I didn't impersonate a character this week because I couldn't think of who to be.
Even though, after talking about on our last podcast, you could have been...
Hi, I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
And I hope that everyone looked that up and watched Repossessed.
Yes, I did find out. Side note, it's just had a Blu-ray release.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, like really recently, it's had a Blu-ray release, like a collector's edition.
Oh, gonna have to check that out.
I looked it up. Unfortunately, it's like America only, so it's like region 1. Yeah, I'm like, that gives us hope for elsewhere that it may come here.
Fingers crossed. I think a lot of Blu-rays, sometimes they can be region free.
Yeah, they can. Like Blu-ray.com will normally tell you the region of something. That is a great website to go to. But yeah, after our last podcast, I looked it up to see if you could actually get it online because I don't actually own it.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, it just had a Blu-ray release. So I was like, okay, well, I obviously need to buy that.
Yes, we do. And everyone else, go support it. It's a great film. So each episode, we'll be diving into creepy subjects, whether that be discussing horror films, ghost stories, urban legends, or just weird and wonderful things. So this week, we will be talking about 112 Ocean Avenue, the Amityville.
And if you don't know what 112 Ocean Avenue is, and you're listening to this as a horror fan, shame on you.
Shame.
Boo hiss boo.
So before we get into it, I thought I'd give a little nugget of information, a bit of trivia. Christine Belford, who played Regina Cunningham, the mother in Stephen King's film Christine, lived at 112 Ocean Avenue for 5 years as a teenager.
No way.
Yes way.
No, I don't believe you. You're lying.
I did not know this.
I'm looking this up now on Wikipedia. So if you hear tapping, that is me just on my laptop. Oh my God, she actually did. She lived at 112 Ocean Avenue for 5 years between the ages of 11 and 16. Oh my God, I never knew that. Also, her family must be minted because that house was like really expensive.
I don't know. Well, back then money, yeah, maybe.
I mean, like later on it dropped in price due to what happened, but like when they bought it, that must have been really expensive because like Long Island is like really affluent area.
Yeah.
It's like rich, ching, everyone's got the Johnny Cashingtons. But I cannot believe that. That is amazing.
So the house, 112 Ocean Avenue, was built in 1927 and for 47 years seemed to be the perfect little family home.
It's gorgeous.
It is very nice.
Dutch colonial style.
Dutch colonial.
Which just in itself, Dutch colonial. Doesn't it just sound lovely? That's very British, I know. Lovely, like we're having a cup of tea. But sorry, carry on.
So it was fine for 47 years until the 13th of November 1974. The Defeo family purchased the Dutch colonial house in 1965. Then 9 years later, Ronald Defeo Jr., also known as Butch, decided to murder 6 members of his family with a high-powered rifle, a .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 336C at around 3 a.m.
And if you are a British person, those stats will mean absolutely nothing to you because we don't have guns here. Is that not like just like a shotgun?
It kind of is. It's like, imagine like an old Western kind of pump action. Oh. There you go.
Sound effects provided by Craig and Anthony. Copyright.
He killed, on that fateful night, Ronald Defeo Sr., 43, Louise Defeo, 43, his mother, Dawn, his elder sister, she was 18, his other sister, Alison, who was 13, his brother, Mark, 12, and his other brother, John, 9.
Which is really sad.
It is really sad. I mean, depending on who you speak to, because obviously he said that he was possessed by a demon or whatever.
But he was possessed by a demon. Well, I'm sure he said like it was the devil, and I'm just like, surely the devil's got better things to do with his time than just focus on this one unknown person.
Yeah, why single you out?
Exactly. He's got marketing to do and stuff.
I think a lot of his friends said that he and his father had
the devil.
His friends, the devil.
Yeah, the devil's friend said.
Yeah, they said that he had a very turbulent relationship with his father. Like,
we'll cross that because I've seen like loads of stuff about that. But yeah, depending on who you speak to, he was possessed by a devil, a demon, a spirit, which supposedly made him do it.
Yeah. at 3 a.m. in the
3
morning.
a.m. But like the really messed up thing about it was that they said like this rifle makes a really loud noise when it goes off. And he killed how many people was it? 6 people. So that gun fired 6 times, yet no neighbor on either side of the property heard a gun going off, which I don't know about me, but if I hear a car backfiring or something,
absolutely,
that will wake me up.
Yes.
So a rifle going off 6 times, you think a neighbor would have heard that, or somebody would have heard it.
Well, they said all members of the family were found face down in their beds.
Yeah, which is weird.
It said all siblings received 1 fatal gunshot wound, but the parents received 2. So technically the gun was fired 8 times in the middle of the night.
Laying face down, weren't they, in their beds or something? So you think, like, you fire that once in a house, and I mean, actually it's a 3-leveled house, but still, the sound's gonna carry.
Yes.
That is gonna wake you up. I'm sure they did they do postmortems and found like no traces of drug or anything within their body?
Ronald said that apparently when he was being investigated, that when he finally admitted it, that he drugged them, but the toxicology showed that they had no levels of anything in their bloodstream.
Wasn't there a thing that, like, was she the only one that wasn't found in her bed?
No, I think every single one of them was.
Because there was a thing that supposedly him and Dawn were involved in some kind of incestuous relationship between them.
I heard that.
And she was part of this thing for killing the family. She was part of it.
Yeah.
Like, she had a gun and she killed some of them and he killed some of them.
Yeah.
But then at the end, she turned on him and he killed her.
Yeah. I think Ronald said that she killed everyone and then he tried to fight her away from the gun or something, and then he ended up shooting her by accident. But he had so many different iterations of the story over the years anyway.
That's a good thing. That's the thing about being a liar. You have to remember what you tell people.
Exactly. And, you know, he's got to be he's a sociopath, so he's going to lie to whatever made him seem good at the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned before, like, the relationship within the family, like, the dad was horrendous,
volatile to extreme.
He was so abusive and used to, like, beat them with belts and things, and other people that were around there said that, like, the wife was terrified of him and the atmosphere in the house was always really bad. The son and dad's relationship was really volatile as well, and they would end up in fist fights and all sorts.
They were Italian, weren't they?
Yeah, they were
and
Italian.
His dad apparently were part of possibly the mafia. There was supposed to be mafia ties to the family.
Yes, there was. Because that was a thing for a while, that they, like, had the idea floating around that it may have been like a hit that was taken out on the family by somebody. I don't know if that ever held water.
I think that's the only one that kind of really makes sense, because they were all basically face down in the bed, so that's execution style.
Yeah.
So maybe Ronald Jr. had done something to really irritate or annoy these gangs, and maybe they were like, do you know what, you've not paid your debt, you've done something, and we're going to now kill your family, but you were going to take the fall for it, and if you say anything else, then, you know. But I don't know, it's the only thing that I can think sounds logical as to how no one left their bed.
It's weird. You'd think someone would get up and run away,
especially a child as young as 9. If they heard something that many times, surely would have got up and ran, or depending on the order, because I don't know if there's really an order as to who died first. So if he shot, like, the kids first, surely the parents going to jump up and...
It just makes no sense. I mean, the slightest noise that goes off in my house in the middle of the night and I'm up like a shot. Nick will lay in bed, nothing bothers him. And he's always said, like, if there's a noise, he's not going to investigate.
I investigate
everything. So if my life was a horror movie, I will be the first one to die. Because any sound where people are sat at home going, don't go in there, girl, he's behind the door. I will be the person that goes in there to look, and I will get killed. That was a quote from Scrubs. If anybody is a fan of Scrubs, that quote that is Scrubs, and it makes me laugh every single time I say it when JD says it. But yeah, I investigate every noise, so I will end up dying because there'll be somebody in there one day that will just take me out, and Nick will happily be upstairs just in bed like, oh, Craig will sort it, because that's usually what happens.
So on the 13th of November, after he murdered his family, apparently he went into Henry's bar in Amityville at 6 p.m. and begged patrons and his friends to come and help him as he believed his parents were dead. They all showed up to the house, and apparently his good friend at the time rang the police, and the police came and obviously found everyone slaughtered. Well, not slaughtered, shot, dead, either way.
Says Butch was taken into protective custody because he told them that it was a mob hit.
Yeah.
That had been taken out on his family. I'm sure that they owned like a car business or something.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like an automobile car lot or something like that. They sold vehicles because I'm sure his dad gave him a car for his birthday, like his 18th birthday. Or
that rings a bell, yeah.
Because he worked where his dad did it as well. Apparently, they were very like, oh, look at us like from the outside with a very image of like this great Italian family. And then inside, it was just batshit crazy.
Yeah, apparently I think was like close to the night he murdered them. Apparently his mum called him because he claimed to have been married to this woman who was living upstate New York or something. And his mum called him and said, like, your father's beating Dawn or Alison, I can't remember which one. You need to come back. And he came back that night and like defended his sister. And I think that's when it all supposed to have gone off. And apparently his wife's brother came with him. But the person who Ronald said was with him to back up his story never existed. Like the police investigated, it never existed. This woman did, though, but she was married to somebody else.
Right. And but apparently he had antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah.
And was a user of heroin and LSD.
Yeah. Well, see, that would explain him doing it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons, but still doesn't explain, again, how no neighbor heard a gunshot 8 times in the middle of the night.
On a quiet street.
Yeah. And then why no one moved from their beds? I mean, these are the things, like, I don't believe personally that it was like this big demonic...
No, I don't buy into the whole demonic possession thing.
But there are inconsistencies as to what happened that no one will know now because he died in prison.
Yeah, he
2021.
died. Yeah, well, I was about to say, I don't think it was too long ago, was it?
No.
He was 69, and cause of death has never been released to the public.
I think they said it was COVID. Like, they suspected it might have been COVID.
Right.
Oh, dear. What a shame. It took a year, though, for the jury to be put together and for the actual trial to take place. But then in November of 1975, he was sentenced to 6 terms of 25 years to life in prison.
Yeah, he never released from prison, did he?
No, he tried to appeal many, many times by changing his story, trying to sell information to them. Wasn't his attorney wanted to write the book on it?
Yeah, that does sound about right.
I can't remember what the attorney's name was now. I did have it written down earlier, but I didn't put it in my notes. But yeah, his attorney wanted to write a book on it to make money, and Ronald was going to get like a cut of it, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
After everything you did, and you're like, oh yeah, by the way, give me money.
But look at Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Yeah.
That's going off at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, her thing. I know she didn't kill her mother, but she had an active part in it.
Gypsy Rose was the one where her mum kept her in a wheelchair, wasn't it? Yeah, see, I don't feel bad for her mum. Like,
like the things her mum did was awful, but like at the end of the day, she got her boyfriend to murder her mother, and she went to like prison. Was it 7 years or something like she did? She's now been released, and now she's this almost like try to be this internet personality with sponsorships and things on Instagram and things like that. And it's just like, okay,
you're now a celebrity.
Yeah, people are really fickle.
They are.
It's weird,
especially if you can really spin a good tale.
Yeah, which if nobody has seen the act with Patricia Arquette,
I've not seen
it is so good. I cannot recommend it enough. And the girl that plays Gypsy in that, I can't think what her name is either, but she was in the Taylor Swift video for I Can See You.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do know who you mean.
Yeah, she was. It's really, really good. I binged it in a couple of days, so complete sidetrack there. But I do recommend it to anybody that likes a good program. It's so interesting and it's really well done. So anyway, sorry, back to point. But yeah, to go in and write a book and then get a percentage for killing your family.
Yeah,
I mean, because a very definition to the word blood money, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. That sentencing, when he was sent, was November 1975. Then a month later, on the 18th of December of 75, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children, Daniel 9, Christopher 7, and Melissa 5, and their dog Harry moved into 112 Ocean Avenue. 28 days later, January 14th of 76, the Lutzes fled the house, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal entities, leaving all their possessions behind.
Now this, the Amityville Horror, I found out about it was one along with The Exorcist when I was a kid. I was obsessed with the Amityville Horror. But this, I remember how I found out about it. I was at home with my mum and she was listening to music and there was a song that came on called Amityville by... I think it's Love Bug.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a song. Amityville, The House on the Hill by Love Bug Starsky. It's a terrible, terrible song. Mum was playing it, and as a kid, 1986, the song came out. I thought the song was really cool because I was this little kid at the time. And Mum was like, "Oh, this is based on a film called The Amityville Horror, which is about this family that live in this haunted house." And obviously, me, I was like, "Oh my god, I love ghosts and things like that." We rented the video from local video store.
Was it Stewart's by any chance?
No, it wasn't Stewart's. It was at the top of Ruskin, right on the corner, which became like the bike shop. We rented it from there. And yeah, I watched Amityville Horror, and that was how I started with my Amityville fixation.
Okay.
But yeah, that was another one that, like, as a kid, I was absolutely obsessed with the Amityville Horror.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been probably because of you that I ever saw it as well, but I know that Mum was a big fan of the Amityville films.
Yeah.
Growing up. And I remember that, I don't know if I'd seen the first one at this point. I must have. And then I wanted to watch the second one, and you were around at a friend's house, and I was there because he's with his younger brother, because I think me and his younger brother were friends. I don't remember the names now. And you had Amityville 2, The Possession, and I started to watch it, and I just... Then me and my friend went out to play, and then I was going, "Oh, I want to watch it. And you're like, "Well, you're going to have to go get it from my friend's house because I left it there." And so I went to get it, and I sat with you after annoying you for days to watch it. And I remember being terrified, especially when he gets possessed.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being terrifying. Goes. Yeah. And I remember not wanting to watch it. And you were like, "You want to watch this? You're going to sit and you're going to watch this."
Childhood trauma.
Yeah. And I think that was the only time really I ever saw The Possession, because I remember as a kid it really, really scared me.
It is a creep. The first one, the first one's creepy and stuff, but I think the second one like kind of does up it a bit, and I remember being quite scared of the second one when I first saw it.
Yeah, so obviously that leads into the whole incest thing and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, they featured that obviously in the second one, but I always remember telling people when they were watching the films, I was like, watch number 2 first, because that's about the family and everything that occurs in the house, and then obviously the Lutzes thing takes place afterwards.
Yeah,
but yeah, I read the book by Jay Anson as well, which the book is really good, and the book scared me, and I couldn't have been very old. I maybe was around 11 or 12, I think, when I read it. I know it was very early secondary school, so you're around like 11, 12 when you start like year 7, 8 time. And I remember, reading the book by Jay Anson. The book is actually quite scary, and there's quite a lot in the book that they didn't put in the film.
I remember reading the book, and the bit that really creeped me out was when he said he hears like the marching band downstairs.
Yes.
For some reason, I don't know why.
Yeah, that always used to freak me.
Yeah.
Marching band.
The sequel, by the way, I don't know if you knew this, was written by Tommy Lee Wallace. He made the It miniseries.
Oh, right.
And he made Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and he made Fright Night 2. I'm meeting him at the HorrorCon in October.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Liked a lot of like his stuff that he's done, but I didn't know until very recently that he wrote the sequel.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, he wrote the screenplay.
Tommy Lee Wallace.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to think that the second film was better than the first one, but I've not seen either of them in so long.
I don't think the second one holds up as good nowadays. I think the first one just has a very certain style about it that it does rate quite well today, because it's just kind of a straightforward-ish like haunted house sort of thing.
Haunted house story,
which is, you know, kind of what I sort of like about haunted house films, when they're more straightforward and they're not too overly complicated.
Yeah, it's not overly convoluted or anything, is it? It's just this family move into this house that ends up being haunted.
Yeah.
But I was obsessed with the house when I was a kid, because the one that they use in the film, because it's very close to the real one.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was such a nice house.
It really is, though.
It's so good.
And those famous eyes have now gone.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe that they've got rid of it. They also like renumbered it, didn't they?
I think it's like 106 Ocean Avenue now.
Instead of 120. I mean, how you renumber houses, I have no idea. But I mean, it's like, why bother? Everyone knows the house.
Yeah.
I know it went up for sale a few years ago, but you could only view it by appointment.
Yeah.
And it was like really strict about who they would let through.
Deposit of like 20,000
before you go in. And I'm sure it was over $1 million they were selling it for.
Yeah.
I mean, but nowadays that house is huge, so it probably is worth a lot.
Well, the Lutz bought it for $80,000.
Can you imagine 80,000? I mean, nowadays, if I saw a house for $80,000, immediately I'd be like, what's wrong?
Yeah. I mean, look up, what is the equivalent of $80,000 in today's money? So 1976, $80,000 in today's money.
Inflation calculator.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's got to be what, like at least close to 500.
598,392.
Oh,
but could you imagine, like, here's a £600,000 house for $80,000, £80,000. I'd be like, okay, something's seriously wrong. Are the foundations shot? Like, what is going on? Is there asbestos everywhere?
Yeah.
You just think that'd be like, no.
Well, they ended up selling it for $55,000 to the next people.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a bargain.
Even more so a bargain. Which is absolutely crazy. I mean, £80,000 for the size of that house.
Yeah, it's just the house is
I mean, even today's money of over 500,000 is still a bargain. When that house probably now is like a couple of million.
Yeah,
it's got to be because of the plot and the size of the house in general is just ridiculous. So after the Lutzes moved in on the 18th of December 75, Father Mancuso, a lawyer, judge of the Catholic Church who lived at a local Sacred Heart rectory, performed a blessing and heard the famous voice, "Get out."
That used to really creep me as a kid, that did, hearing that voice.
It's it's kind of crazy. Well, if you go by what the priest says, and I think it holds more weight because he's a priest, and you wouldn't expect a priest to be lying to make money because, you know, they're devout to the cloth and all this malark. And apparently not long after that, he rang the Lutzes to tell them to stay out of the room because he didn't finish the blessing and was cut off by static on the phone apparently. And then not long after that, he suffered from a major fever and blisters on his hand in the shape of stigmata.
Yeah, it was like the sewing room of the house, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was the one that was like, because in the film, it's the one that always like fills with flies and things like that. Yeah, the sewing room at the front of the house.
And like I said, you kind of expect other people to lie about these sort of things, but you kind of supposed to anyway trust in people of like religion, like priests and things like that. Don't get me started on priests. But anyway, like, especially back then, they had a certain reputation about them. You believed them, you trusted them. I mean, if you'd come from like a weird background and only just become a priest, then I would have been a bit more skeptical about his story.
Yeah, it's just a bit odd.
Yeah.
You just think, what's he got to lie for? But I don't know, because obviously they were saying that it's always been a thing that the Lutzes created this whole story for the whole media attention and everything that kind of went afterwards. Yeah. Which obviously they got because they got a book out of it, they got the film out of it, the talk shows they were invited on.
Well, apparently they were introduced to Jay Anson, wasn't it?
Yeah, they wrote the book.
Yeah, they were introduced to him at a cocktail party or something like that. So it's kind of a bit, you know.
There was I can't remember, there was a documentary that I watched a few years ago, and there was a woman, she was a journalist, and she was saying that when they were doing the interviews for the book, Jay Anson was recording audio cassettes of them talking for them to look back on. And she was saying she's heard these tapes and the sections in it where they're making up bits of the story. Yeah. Like with Jay Anson, like, oh, you know, we could say this happened and we could attribute this to this kind of side of it. So she's saying like she's heard these tapes. So she was like, you know, I believe she was like it was all a big hoax and it was just a money-making ploy that they did. But no, I mean, no one will ever know.
No, this is true.
They both passed away now. Yeah. Kathleen Lutz died first with, I can't remember what she had. It was like a breathing disease or something, I think, wasn't it?
And she looked really old and haggard, didn't she?
Because she was saying that when she was in the house, she saw a vision of herself like as an old woman. Yeah. And it was always like her biggest fear that that's what she would turn into. And in the end, she did. Yeah. So she always said like later on that it was kind of like that was like the premonition of what was going to happen to her.
And by the end, they weren't even really married.
No, they weren't married. They separated, I think, or divorced. Yeah. Sort of by the end of it. I was trying to see what it was, that the disease that she had, that she died
I
of.
can't remember. It's kind of like on the tip of my tongue as to the actual illness, and I can't think what it was. Oh gosh, because it was something that made her age quite rapidly.
Yeah. And she had like, I know I saw interviews of her, and she had like an oxygen tank with her to like try and help her breathe. Chronic respiratory disease. She ended up wheelchair bound. He was her ex-husband, so they did actually divorce.
I think they remained kind of friends though, didn't they?
I know she died first, and then years later they did the remake of the Amityville film with like Ryan Reynolds and
Melissa George
in it, which I don't like.
I like it.
Really not a fan of that film.
It's as a standalone film rather than looking at the remake. I do like it. I think it's got a great atmosphere to it.
I think I've always viewed it as, because Melissa George, when she was doing promo stuff for it, she did an interview and was like, we're going back to the source material. It's going to be really faithful to the books.
Yeah.
And then when you watch it, it isn't.
It's not, no.
It's very loosely based around what happened, and that was not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I think if it had been called anything else, I'd have been absolutely fine with it.
Yeah.
I was saying to Nick, was having a conversation this morning about Netflix and The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
I hated that thing on Netflix because
Really?
it was nothing to do with the Shirley Jackson story of Hill House.
Yeah.
They just cashed in on the name Hill House.
Yeah.
So I went in expecting it to be based on the Shirley Jackson book, and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
I think if you called it something else, I probably would have been fine.
I think that was its biggest mistake with that, because I thought it was a great show, but they should never have called it Hill House or had the names in it.
Nothing to do with that.
They should have made it its own identity.
Yeah. And which they should have done with the Amityville Horror. They should have done it as a completely separate thing instead of calling it that, but they cashed in sort of on the name on it.
Yeah, and the iconicness of the house and whatnot.
But I know George Lutz was suing the movie studio over it.
Who was it? Was it Lionsgate?
I think it was MGM.
Yes, it was MGM, I think.
Because they did the first one, so I don't know if they held sort of the rights to it.
That would make sense.
But yeah, he was suing them for like break of contract or something like that, because he was saying that like they took just the general idea and then turned it into like this big Hollywood thing, which is not what he signed off and agreed to. But I believe he died before anything on the court case was ever actually settled for it. So I don't know if his son or anything ever picked up, but I know his son Daniel, is it Danny? Daniel is
Daniel.
One of them.
Yeah,
he did one.
My Amityville,
which I watched, is terrible.
He is so messed up.
Yeah, he really is.
And to be fair, both sons have said that George was not very nice. That he was quite violent and he was very strict, and he was just not particularly very nice to them at all.
Oh wow, my Amityville Horror 2012, so it was older than I thought. But yeah, I did watch it
because his other brother Christopher did the Amityville Origins for the BBC. Well, it was on the BBC. I don't know if it was for the BBC. It was a good documentary, and even he seems a bit more level-headed, but there are moments where you kind of see it in him as well. Like, you're messed up.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Have you not watched it? It's really good. It's in 4 or 5 parts.
Oh, okay. No, I've never even heard of it.
I highly recommend watching it. It's really good. I think it came out last year.
I will look that up. No, because the only one I'd ever seen was the Daniel Lutz one, which, like as you just said, it was very odd.
He's really troubled. He's very, very troubled.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can kind of
reference that in the thing that he's had like real like issues,
mental issues. And but Christopher, he seems a lot more level-headed, but you can see signs of the abuse that the children would have endured through their parents. I mean, not necessarily just by George, but the fact of what they did to them, making them possibly lie. You know, which abandoning them for months on end while they did book tours, television shows, you know, having to then go to school and listen to like the ridicule from other children.
Could you imagine?
You lived in a haunted house, boo boo. You know what kids are like.
Yeah, the woman I was saying who'd listened to the tapes, she said that like whenever anybody interviewed the children, she was like, they spoke in such a way and used words that were not typical of a child talking. And she was saying it's literally like they'd been fed a story over and over and over again and could recite it from memory. But yeah, she said like speaking to them was not how you were taught to a child. But then like, is there something in it? Because you have that, was it NBC or something like ABC that did investigation into the house, and they set up cameras, and there's that picture of like a little boy on the landing.
Well, the thing is, when you watch the Origins Amityville on BBC, apparently one of the people that were there says it's one of the camera crew.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks like a little boy.
Yeah, apparently from the angle and stuff, he's popped out because he shows you a side by side of the crew member and then that picture.
Oh,
whether or not you believe it or he's, lying, whatever. But these poor kids, I just feel sorry for the kids because they would have gone through so much. But both of them still to this day, they don't deny that it's not real.
Yeah.
They don't, they can't be getting that much money from it. If they came out and did a tell-all book and said it's a lie, they'd make loads of money.
Yeah, you'd get a book deal.
Yeah.
Sell a book.
Yeah, and a lot of people will probably buy it, but they still, to this day, don't refute the fact that it was real.
I don't know. I like to think I'm open-minded. So, as a kid, I was absolutely
100% it was real.
Yeah, it was real. Yeah.
It was real.
No question. But sort of as I've got older, I suppose I've become a bit more cynical.
Yeah, they were supposed to, what was it, hoof prints in the snow outside?
Which was supposed to be like the pig,
Jodie.
wasn't it? Jodie, that's it.
Jodie.
You're better than me. So I'm bad with names. But yeah, it was Jodie was the hoofed pig that the daughter made friends with, and you would see like the red eyes.
Yeah, the windows.
That bit in the film where like she goes in and she's talking to her.
You scared her away? She's outside or something.
When she goes to the window to close it, that used to give me chills as a kid, 'cause it's the music that cuts in with it.
Yeah.
When she sees the eyes, it's so scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as a kid, I was absolutely convinced this thing is 100% real. You could not tell me otherwise.
100%.
But now as I've grown up and I'm just thinking,
I think as I'm getting older and I hear more and more about it, I'm becoming more and more skeptical to it.
Yeah.
So on March 6, 1976, Ed and Lorraine Warren entered the house with other researchers, and that was the night that the famous child picture was photographed with the white glowing eyes. George and Kathy didn't want to go back into the house.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did go back into the house. I don't think they ever reclaimed any of their furniture.
Apparently they did. I
I
always thought they didn't, because it's always been like they left everything behind.
Yeah.
When they finally fled the house in January of 76, apparently once they were officially gone, they asked someone to go in and collect some stuff, a moving person by himself, and he claimed nothing creepy happened to him. It was all fine. Obviously, the researchers went in on March 6th of 76, so it was only a couple of months after, really, that there was still a lot there, because one of the researchers said that when she went in, the strange thing was like this gingerbread house that Kathy had made the children for Christmas was still on the table, and the food was spoiling and things like that. So, if they decided that from the start, from knowing the history, that this was going to be like a hoax, that they were going to make a big deal. It's a long... What's the word you look a long run or whatever it is?
You planned it, haven't you? One of the things I read was that they bought the house and it was more than they could afford to begin with. And George, like Kathy wanted the house, George got in over his head and financially couldn't afford it. His business started failing. They had like a boat that they was paying for, and then it's the speedboat, which is in the film, and then they had mooring charges and everything. So it was like money after money after money that was piling up. Business wasn't doing very well, and they said that they kind of constructed this whole story as a means to get out of the mortgage, for the house, to basically just like abandon it as a means for them to get out, kind of thing, but then concoct this whole story afterwards to earn some Johnny Cashingtons, which, I think they did.
You've got to give them due, as awful as it was, obviously, if the children weren't involved, I'd have been like, do you know what? You two did a good job.
Yeah, like, hats off to you. Yeah, you played a great PR blinder on this.
So, up until they died, they were still doing interviews and saying, it's real. There were still book deals, because apparently, I think it was Christopher, said that George claimed that Christopher was possessed or something, and he was trying to kill George. Probably got that bit around my head, but he claims that like he was sucking the life out of him, and that he distanced himself from the children all the time. And then many years later, when they were all grown up, George was going to be writing another book for another film or something, and it was going to be all about how Christopher was killing him.
Oh, okay.
And he was furious with George for this, because George, I think was mentally unhinged by this point as well. I mean, you're having to live your life with a big lie over your head.
Yeah.
I think it's going to probably take its toll on you.
Yeah, and it's that thing, isn't it? You've constantly got it sort of there now for you as something you can never, ever escape from.
I think if Kathy and George came out and said it was all a hoax, I think there would have been massive repercussions to them. I think if the children came out now and said it was all a hoax, I don't think it would, because they were children. They were being told to play along.
Yeah, you can't blame kids for doing what your parents tell you to do.
No.
You know, it's it's just, you know, who's going to say no to their parents?
And I still wonder to this day whether or not even Kathy was fully involved, or she was going along with what George was making her do.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to wonder, haven't you?
Cause, I mean, like I said, both children that have come out and said stuff have both said how horrible George was.
Yeah.
And so I think one of them said, like, thank God the bastard's dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's some hatred, that is.
Yeah, they do harbour a lot of hatred towards him.
But I mean, they did well. They created this whole new brand
of haunted house, really.
Well, yeah.
Well,
I was just sort of looking at Amityville of how many films it spawned.
There's been 45 films,
all with the Amityville title.
Yeah, with the Amityville title.
Wow, that's a lot. I was looking back at what I've seen. I've seen Amityville 1. There's Amityville 2. The Possession. There's Amityville 3. I can't think what that one's called. Amityville 3 3D.
3D.
Because that was like actual 3D, like with the red and blue when it came out.
Yeah.
There's 4 The Evil Escapes.
Is that the clock?
No, that's the lamp. It goes into the weird lamp, which it was like, it's not a bad film. Patty Duke, sort of, you know, made for TV film. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And then there was Amityville Curse, which was a mirror. Which was a mirror that was supposedly from the house. And then you had Amityville It's About Time, where there was a clock from the house. Amityville Dollhouse. And then I think that's about it.
I think I've only ever seen like the first, second, and Dollhouse.
I've seen Amityville A New Generation. I have seen that as well. So all of these ones I've seen. And then they did one 2017 Amityville The Awakening.
Oh, I did see that one with Bella Thorne.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, because
they rebuilt the house for that.
Yeah, and the family moves into the Amityville house.
The son's ill.
And and it's what's his name from Star Wars and Shameless. I should know what his name is.
I can't think.
It's the ginger guy because he's really nice.
Because I remember watching that one, The Awakening, and to a point I was like, do you know what? This isn't a bad film. And I think by the end of it, I was like, no, this isn't a good film.
It's one of the things where you kind of like, by the end it comes around, you kind of like, Cameron Monaghan, that's it. Yeah, and he's like in a hospital bed, isn't he? He's really poorly, and they move to the Amityville house, and then weird things start happening in the house. But I remember there's a section in the film where they're in the house watching the Amityville horror film. She's in the living room of the real Amityville house, and they're watching the Amityville horror.
I wonder
TV.
if it's meant to be in a world where it's actually real.
Yeah.
So everything from the IP is real then as well.
It's weird. It's just very, very strange. But like you, to a certain point, it had me, because it was rumored to be coming for ages,
Yeah.
and then it was made, and then it didn't get released for so long.
Yeah.
It kept getting pushed back. So eventually, when I did get to see it, and up to a certain point, I was like, okay, this isn't terrible, because Amityville films have a reputation for being awful. And then I think by the end of it, I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm kind of checked out now.
Well, there's a low budget one that came out a couple of years ago, which was Amityville in Space, where the house goes into space.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
I know there's a sex film, Amityville Vibrator or something like that. It's called. But
we've just been flagged now.
It's a weird one, but yeah. So, too many films.
Yeah, 45 films with the IP, though.
Yeah. But I think it's that thing you're cashing in, because most people know Amityville as a word and a name.
But I don't know how they can get away with it, though, because obviously it has got a copyright on it. I suppose maybe because it's a real place.
Yeah, because it's a real town. Maybe that's why you can use it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think is it Amityville Horror maybe copyright.
Yeah, possibly.
But Amityville as a place, I'm like, you can do what you want with it.
Yeah.
It exists, so you can use it however you like. But yeah, it's very odd. I bet like the people, like the mayor of Long Island, is just like, why did these Lutzers ever come in?
I know. Well, the people that moved in afterwards, apparently, the ones that bought it for $55,000, they said that everything that the Lutzers had claimed with the damage to the house Nothing was damaged. Like the doors were original. They said like the things that like the doors meant to have been ripped off its hinges, and they said, well, the front door's original and it hasn't been repaired, so I don't know what you're talking about.
And they lived there for a very long time.
They have, yeah. I don't know if that's the people that have just recently sold it, maybe.
Yeah, it sold for 1.5 million.
Wow.
In I think it was 2022 or 2023, so it was very recently.
And again, not as much as I was expecting. To be fair, I was expecting to have gone for more, being the history of it.
But it's lovely. It's a really nice house.
It's a beautiful house.
It's so good. You don't get houses really like that in the UK.
No, you don't.
They don't tend to exist. But
No.
it's just such a nice design. But yeah, 1.5 million. So I'm like...
So again, though, because for the size of the house, the plot, and it had its own boathouse or whatever.
Yeah,
I would have
boathouse, swimming
expected
pool.
more, especially with the added history of the films.
Yeah,
and like,
you think the brand of what it is
Yeah.
will add a certain amount of value.
like
as
some
well.
horror fan would have been like, yeah, I'll pay like $3 million for that.
Yeah, like the person that bought the Scream House, Stu's Scream House, and rents it out as an
Home Alone's
Airbnb.
house.
Yeah, Home Alone house. You know, you're getting old when you just sort of look at Home Alone when you're watching it. You just think, what did they do to afford this place? It's no longer like a kid's film. You're just racking your brains thinking, what did your parents do?
Yeah.
It's a nice house. I'd have bought it if I had 1.5 million, but unfortunately I don't.
Yes. Well, the idea for this year was when me and Lewis go back to Salem was going to go down to New York and see it, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen because of the cost of like traveling that far. And
Yeah, I always said if I went to sort of that part of America, I would go out of my way to just detour by Long Island so I can just see the house.
I wonder what the new owners are like, if they're more receptive to
I
visitors.
imagine not. It's like, it's my home. Get off, like...
Well, don't buy it then.
Yeah, I know. It becomes that thing, doesn't it? It's like...
I mean, if I was the owners of that house, okay, I wouldn't want people on my property, but I wouldn't be like stopping people from taking photos. I mean, I'd probably even host movie nights in there of the Amityville
literally,
films.
like, think of like the amount of money you could make from publicity.
Yeah.
I mean, like the woman that lives in Gavin and Stacey's house, if anyone has watched that, like she welcomes, but she's got signs up in the window that was just like, yeah, well, I welcome people in if you want to have a look around Gavin and Stacey's, you know, home kind of thing. Like, it's fine. I'm open on these days. And it's what I do. You can make a whole income from it, like charging people. Like, do you want to have a tour around the house?
Yeah.
And then you say, like, Halloween every year. Like, come on, let's open up the back garden, squeeze as many people in as we can, and show a film.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
you'd make a fortune from it. I think as well, the like my obsession for haunted house movies and making haunted house movies comes from films like Amityville.
Well, yeah.
I think if you look at a lot of my sort of films that I've made, you would see a lot of things influenced and inspired me.
Influenced and inspired by.
Like Amityville and things like that. And I think for us as well, like, I don't know how skeptical you are with the paranormal, but like, obviously we grew up in a house that was very eerie. And I to this day still say, like, we should have written a freaking book on our house because that house was scary.
Yeah,
like,
it did weird things, didn't it, in that house?
I think every one of us has claimed for something to have happened in that house. Even Dad, and Dad is a full-on skeptic.
Yeah.
Like, he, even to this day, will be like, no, this happened, but I don't think it was anything. Like, Dad said he got up to go to the toilet and there's that big mirror, and he saw a child run by him across the landing, and then was like, what are they doing out about at this time? Went and checked on us all, and we were all in our beds.
Yeah, the amount of times that I would put things down and that they would move, and then at night you would hear like people, like kids playing on the landing, like kids running on the landing.
Yeah.
And you could hear footsteps.
Yeah. I remember Mum and Dad said that when we'd all left except you were at work and they were watching a film downstairs and they heard heavy footsteps, and Mum messaged you and was like, what are you doing upstairs? Like, and you were like, I'm at work.
Yeah. I remember hearing Grandma's voice after she passed away. I was upstairs and I know I heard her. Other times I just heard voices in general because I knew I was home alone. I thought Mum and Dad were back. I went downstairs, checked the house was empty, and when I was downstairs, they pulled up on the driveway. But I know I heard them shout.
Yes, yeah. So, I remember as a child, I cannot describe to you how terrified of that house I was. Like, I can't even express to you. Like, I wish I could grab you and be like, scream at you as to how scared I was of the house. It was only seemed to have been upstairs. I was thinking about this last night. No one was going to do the podcast. And I remember as a child being terrified to go upstairs unless somebody walked me upstairs and then put me in my room because I was too scared to be up there by myself or go.
Everything that happened normally happened upstairs.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like, do you remember the light bulb?
Yes. Well, I don't remember, but I remember being told about it.
I found that light bulb because I would, when you used to go up our stairs, there was a light fixture that was directly over the staircase. So I went to there was a light switch at the bottom of the stairs. I went to turn it on to turn the upstairs light on because I didn't like going upstairs when it was dark because it just creeped me out. And it didn't work. So I remember getting a torch and going upstairs and like the light isn't working. And the light bulb was in the corner of the landing. We used to have a little landing that was there. So at the top of the stairs, can go left or right to a bedroom. And it was in the corner of the landing outside the bathroom door. And it's like, if that bulb had fell out of the light fixture, it would have fallen down the stairs.
Yeah.
And also, it
Smashed.
was a good few feet off the floor because I could stand up straight on there. So it's a good 6 foot this thing was from the floor. So like if a light bulb falls that far, it's going to smash.
It's good. I'd say from the step to the ceiling where the light was, I would have said it was more.
Oh yeah, it was more than that, definitely. But yes, if it had fallen out of that light fixture, it would have fallen down the stairs and smashed because things fall straight unless thrown at an angle. But if you drop something, it falls straight.
Unless it drops and there's a big gust of wind suddenly.
Yeah. To blow it and then gently blow it to the floor so that it didn't break. It made no sense. And I don't think anyone to this day can ever explain what happened with that light bulb.
I said numerous times that I saw the end of a black dog walk into Mum and Dad's room. I said that so many times and no one believed me. And then Christopher's partner at the time was like, I just saw a black dog go into your parents' bedroom. And everyone was like, oh, Anthony said he saw a black dog many times. Oh, suddenly we believe him.
Yeah. I remember being sat on one side of my bedroom, putting the TV remote down. I got up to pick something up from the other side of the room, went to sit down and the remote had gone. It was on the other side of the room, like on top of like my video and stuff when I was in that back bedroom.
Yeah.
And it was on top of my video on top of a shelf. And yet I'd just been sat in a chair and it was next to me and it had moved across the room.
I remember a time that I was in the room next to Mum and Dad's, not the small room, the big room. And we'd just been given an old TV. It was that one that had like the wood panelled effect.
Yeah.
And Christopher and Lisa, our other siblings, were playing in the other room. And I was watching the TV and out of nowhere, the volume went from what it was to full, like full. And this was a TV you had to like move the bar.
The bar at the bottom.
Yeah, you had to physically turn it up and down by this little lever, and it went to like super loud. And I ran out of that bedroom, and Lisa came in. I remember this clear as day. I was very young. Lisa came in, turned it down, and then yelled in the room, "You leave my brother alone! You don't do that to him!" Never happened again. That never happened. Yeah,
fighting the battle.
Yeah, the scariest thing that ever happened to me in that house, and no one believes me. Even Lewis, when I tell him, he's like, "Oh, you must have been asleep." I was like, "I was not asleep." And I've told this story so many times. I even said it on my friend's podcast. So I was just gotten into bed, climbed into bed, was sharing a room with Christopher. And I was facing the wall, just climbed into bed. And I rolled over and there was this black figure stood by the bedroom door. And I was staring at it intently. And I was just saying to Christopher, turn on the light. And he was like, go to sleep, go to sleep. I was like, Christopher, turn on the light. And he was like, go to sleep. This figure opened its arms to me like this, and I remember it had like hanging fabric from its arms. Like I remember this clear as day. And I was going, Christopher, please turn on the light. And he was like, no, go to sleep. So I rolled over to face the wall.
Oh God, I would not have turned my back on that.
I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. So I turned back, and it was next to the bed.
Oh God, no, it's like a horror film.
I screamed and ran from the room, right? And Rob, our sister's boyfriend at the time, was living with us. He had heard me like moaning, like saying stuff to Christopher, and stood outside the door and heard me come in. I flung the door open and he went, boo, like outside the door. I ran to the bed and started crying. I was that terrified. I mean, obviously the figure wasn't my brother-in-law because the door was shut. He just heard the commotion and thought he'd play a prank. But I remember this clear as day. Like I cannot describe to you how terrified I was. And I just remember bawling my eyes out because I was so scared.
Surprised.
And that had to be the scariest thing that I happened to me in that house.
Told you that house was messed up.
It was, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, it was only a field before that house, and it wasn't even that old of a house because Mum and Dad bought it in '84.
Yeah, and it was built in the 70s, I think it was.
Yeah, I think either 60s or 70s, so it wasn't even that old.
It was a wimpy house. Yeah. I'm sure it was early 70s it was built, and it was just a field before that.
Yeah.
So unless someone had done some messed up shit there beforehand.
But that was like, because a lot of what happened to us when we were kids in that house has inspired me a lot as to
it's one of those
films.
things that sort of, when you talk about it and you just mention like, oh, I can hear these noises and this weird thing happened and I put this thing down, and if it's just like one person, you could be like, okay, like you're just a bit forgetful, you're hearing things. But then as something happened to everybody, and it was very similar things that happened to everybody. Yeah. Different times, and so you just got to think, was there something to it?
Well, Mum said numerous times that she heard Dad say her name, and she'd be like, what do you want? And he's like, I didn't shout you.
Yeah,
and then Dad heard Mum shout him, and he'd be like, what do you want? She's like, I didn't call you.
Janet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just like...
Yeah, I know. It's that thing. And say I will insist to the day that I die, I heard Grandma's voice after she died. Yeah. I was at home alone, and I know I heard her voice, and I actually went looking for her. I didn't find her. Yeah. So she was there. I'm really annoyed that she didn't say anything to me.
Or something impersonating Grandma's voice.
Or something impersonating that wanted to get me out of there. Yeah, I know.
Leading to a false sense of security.
Yeah, I know I heard her. So, yeah, and I will always insist on that. And that's what I say, like, I didn't used to be a skeptic, but as I've got older, I just think, weird things happen. The world's a weird place. But then that happened to me, and I'm just like, I know this happened. Yeah. I will always insist that this happened.
We should have had Ed and Lorraine Warren come and investigate.
Yeah. Can I explain it? Absolutely no, I can't. But it happened.
Yeah.
So do you still have the video footage from when you set up the camera in the living room? Yeah. So one night when... Anthony set up a camera in the living room. He closed the curtains on the living room window, didn't you? Yeah. The door was shut for the back garden as well, and curtains were closed on there. And he left a video camera running throughout the course of the night.
Because I knew things had happened and our parents were away, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity to see if we can catch something.
No one's here. No one's going to come through to pick up anything on the camera. And there's like weird white... strobing like lightning type thing that appears, and because I showed it to someone and they were like, it's a reflection of a car light, and I said, and I was like, the way that the thing moves isn't the way a normal light reflection would travel, because it like goes fast and turns.
There's one that starts on the floor and then spirals up, like almost like a firework into like a circle, and then kind of goes off in a big light. But the weird thing was, if you have headphones on when you listen to this, each time one of these light appears, the mic pops. Yeah, it pops like there's a pressure.
So it's so weird. And never was able to explain what that was. I'm glad you still got that footage. You have to like put it up or link it somewhere.
I will put it in the footage to this as we're talking about it. Because I had people say, well, why did you set up a camera in the living room? I was like, because I knew things had happened. So I was just seeing if I could capture anything. And I did. Because I tried it again the next night because Christine came and slept over. I mean, Christine slept downstairs. Nothing happened. I don't know if it's because we were downstairs. I'm not sure. But
something had a field day with us in that place.
Oh, big time. But if Ed and Lorraine Warren had come to us, right? Do you believe that they were real? Like, I know they're real people, obviously, but do you believe what they did and what they said and what they claimed were real?
They helped a lot of people, and whether that was genuine or not, people took solace in what they did and they helped people. So I think in that way, I'm like, what you provided was a good service. So
I don't think they ever charged for things, did they?
Didn't.
They made their money through tours and things like that, didn't they?
Lecturing at universities and things like that was how they made their money. So if anyone wanted their help, it was free. But they got involved with so many different cases. Yeah. Wasn't she like a sensor or something like that? She could sense things and
she was
see
a sensitive,
things. And I don't think Ed had anything. He could do exorcism and things like that. Like he was blessed by the church.
Yeah, I think so, basically.
Kind of act on their behalf. And
he was like her heavy, really, wasn't he?
Yeah. But, I mean, they never charged for anything. So you got to think, like, they never exploited
I suppose
anything.
Even if it was like a big hoax that what they did, people took piece from what they did for them.
Yeah, they went all over the world, didn't they? Kind of with things which obviously inspired like the Conjuring stories. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
because they went to the thing is, they went to the Enfield haunting, but they were only there for like a couple of days.
Yeah, they weren't there for long.
Because apparently Ed said if you play your cards right, you could make some money from this.
Oh yeah.
Apparently he said that to like one of the people involved in that haunting. But yeah, they weren't actually as involved in it as the Conjuring kind of perceives them as.
Made it out to be, but that's Hollywood, isn't it?
Yeah,
dramatize something.
But I think they were heavily involved in the Smurl family haunting.
Yeah,
which we would totally have to have a podcast about.
Yeah,
like involve that next time because we grew up loving that film and it's still a travesty to this day that you cannot buy it.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's never been released. Like, so yourself, I think that's Fox.
Yeah, I think it was
that Fox.
Yeah,
my God,
so many people love that film. It was Sally Kirkland.
Sally Kirkland, yes, it is.
I mean, I've got the book, and the book is fantastic. And
it was a really well done film.
It was, and again with that. Because there was two families that lived together, so it was the in-laws that lived next door to the adjoining house to them, the duplex, and they were old, like they were the old in-laws, and for them to claim themselves, who were also big church-going Catholic, I think Catholic people, for the old people to claim for all of this to have happened, I think it gives it some kind of gravity. I mean, the main family, the husband and wife, Jana, and I can't remember the husband's name is now, but for them to say stuff, I'm like, okay, you know, they could be lying. But for
Jack and Janet Smurl.
That's it, Jack and Jana. But for the in-laws to say this stuff, I don't know. I kind of feel like it has a bit more gravity to it.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast talking about that and some of the others like the Enfield haunting and stuff.
Yeah.
And Hilltop Drive things. So there's so many when you start looking into them. But I mean, for all its things, the Amityville Horror has given me many, many years worth of enjoyment.
Yes, this is true.
A good book, a good film, a couple of good films in the series. So George and Kathleen Lutz did some great things there. They put this thing out into the world and it now lives on.
It does.
So I'm not mad about that at all.
No.
But...
Well, we've now reached our hour mark.
Okay.
So we'll probably just leave it there. So next time when Craig's on, we will probably be talking something else spooky or potentially Final Girls, perhaps, you know?
That's an option. I do love me a Final Girl.
Yes, I thought today would be a good opportunity to kind of maybe steer less away from film and more towards the spooky side of Amityville. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with me and Craig. Remember to stay creepy and we shall speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.